In a world that measures worth in titles and bank accounts, one man proved that the greatest power isn't found in boardrooms, but on the floor blowing bubbles. "Sir, step back, she'll bite." The security guard's voice cracked like a whip through the marble lobby. Lucas Hale froze mid-mop, instinctively clutching the handle like a shield. At the center of the chaos, a small girl with pale blonde hair sat on the floor, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, rocking back and forth beside the giant corporate sculpture. Her face was blank, her eyes, however, darted like trapped birds. Around her, 5 suited executives stood helplessly. One woman whispered into her phone, "She's having another episode, where's her nanny?" The girl's soft humming was nearly drowned by the building's cold silence. Lucas took a slow step forward. "May I?" The guard blocked him with an arm. "That's the ward girl," he hissed. "Don't get involved. The last guy who tried was fired on the spot." But Lucas wasn't listening. He wasn't looking at the suits or the security camera blinking red overhead. He was watching her. The way her fingers tapped the floor in a rhythm only she seemed to hear. The way her breathing quickened with every footstep that came too close. "I'm not going to talk to her," Lucas said, voice calm. "I'm just going to sit." And he did, right there on the cold marble floor, 5 feet away from her, still in his janitor's uniform and worn-out boots. He reached into his work cart and pulled out a small plastic bottle of dish soap. Then, wordlessly, he dipped his fingers in water from his mop bucket and began to blow bubbles. 1, 2, 3. The girl stilled, her rocking slowed, her humming softened. She watched, transfixed, as iridescent bubbles floated into the air, some popping, some drifting lazily upward like secrets refusing to land. Lucas didn't look at her, he didn't ask questions, he just kept blowing bubbles. From the mezzanine above, a woman stood in tailored heels and a slate-gray coat that cost more than Lucas's monthly rent. Her blonde hair was wound into a tight bun. Her arms were crossed, but her eyes, icy and calculating, were fixed on the scene below. Maylene Ward, billionaire CEO of Wardcore Biotech, had commanded rooms full of world leaders and crushed hostile takeovers before her second cup of coffee. But now, watching a janitor calm her daughter with soap bubbles, she could barely breathe. Eva, her daughter, her mystery, her burden, and the janitor, what was his name? Hale. She took the elevator down. When the doors slid open, she stepped into the lobby like a queen surveying a battlefield. "Mr. Hale," she said crisply. Lucas stood slowly. "Ma'am, I'd like to speak with you upstairs now." His gaze flicked to the girl, Eva, who was now lying on her side, completely calm, eyes following a single bubble as it hovered just above her face. "I don't." "I wasn't asking," Maylene cut in. Then to the guard, "Call Dr. Sharma, have him check on Eva immediately." She turned, heels clicking, not waiting to see if Lucas followed, but he did. Her office smelled like steel and silence. "Shut the door," she ordered. Lucas obeyed. For a long moment she said nothing, just stared at him like she was trying to figure out what piece of machinery he'd crawled out of. "Who taught you that?" she asked at last. "The bubbles, the whatever that was." Lucas met her gaze without flinching. "My daughter," he said simply. "She has sensory processing disorder. I used to teach special education before," he trailed off. "No need to give me more than I asked for." Maylene leaned forward. "Let me be clear, my daughter does not engage, she does not play, she does not respond, not to doctors, not to specialists, not to me, and you," her voice cracked ever so slightly, blew some bubbles and she went silent. Lucas didn't answer, he didn't need to. "I want you to work with her," Maylene said finally. He blinked. "Excuse me." "Once a week, twice if possible, I'll compensate you accordingly." "I'm a janitor, Miss Ward." "I can change that. I don't need charity." "I'm not offering charity, I'm offering a job." Lucas gave a slow, measured breath. "What she needs isn't a job." Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt. No, that was too human. Maybe grief sharpened into steel. "She has the best care money can buy," Maylene snapped. Lucas's voice was soft. "Maybe that's the problem." Silence, the kind of silence that rearranges the walls between people. Then he added, "If I say yes, it's under one condition." Maylene raised a brow. "I don't work for you, I work with Eva. And when I'm with her, no observers, no cameras, no clipboard psychologists lurking in the corner." She studied him long enough for him to wonder if he'd just cost himself his job entirely. Then, slowly, Maylene nodded. "I'll have my assistant contact you." Lucas gave a small nod, then we'll see if she's ready. As he opened the door to leave, Mayline called after him. What color were those bubbles? Lucas paused, turned back. Blue, he said. Always start with blue, it calms the chaos. The door closed with a soft click, but the echo of his words remained like a whisper in a cathedral no one had prayed in for years. I don't need you to fix her. That was the first thing Mayline Ward said when Lucas arrived at the penthouse less than 48 hours after their first meeting. No greeting, no handshake, just that. Lucas paused in the marble foyer, his daughter Becca's small hand wrapped in his. His work boots squeaked slightly on the polished floors. He scanned the space, white walls, glass railings, sharp edges everywhere. No softness, no warmth, just precision and power. I don't fix children, he replied quietly. They're not broken. Mayline blinked just once. Her arms were crossed tightly, but a muscle ticked along her jaw. She's in her room, she said, through the hall on the left. Lucas turned to Becca and crouched. You okay to draw for a bit? Becca nodded, pulling a crayon roll from her backpack. Is she the quiet girl? Lucas smiled, the very one. Then I'll be quiet too, Becca whispered, tiptoeing toward the corner of the vast living room like it was a library made of clouds. Mayline watched the exchange, an unreadable expression on her face. She's obedient. She's kind, Lucas corrected. He walked down the hall without waiting for permission. The door to Eva's room was ajar. He knocked gently before pushing it open. It was a palace, tall windows, white curtains, toys lined up with military precision. And there, curled in the corner like a question mark, was Eva, her blonde head pressed against the window pane, watching the city like it might vanish if she blinked. Lucas didn't speak. He sat down slowly, about 10 feet away, pulled a small notepad from his jacket and began to draw. 5 lines, a circle, some stars. Eva didn't turn. After 3 minutes, he held the sketch up slightly, then set it down beside him and waited. Nothing, just the sound of a clock ticking too loudly for such a rich home. Then a shift. Eva rose without a word, crossed the room in slow, bird-like steps, picked up the paper and sat right next to him. Mayline, watching silently through the cracked door, covered her mouth with her hand. She hadn't seen Eva willingly sit beside anyone in nearly a year. Lucas didn't look at the child. He began a new sketch, this time a bubble floating above a girl's head. Eva reached for a crayon. Not a word was spoken, not a command given, and yet something sacred was unfolding, wordless, weightless, and impossible to interrupt. 15 minutes later, Lucas emerged from the room. Mayline was waiting with crossed arms, but her face had softened. She drew with you, she said, as if needing to hear herself say it. She started the conversation, Lucas replied. Mayline's brow furrowed. She didn't say a word. Talking and communicating, Lucas said gently, aren't always the same thing. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and walked into the kitchen. Would you like something to drink? Water's fine. She poured it herself, not through a machine, not with a butler, just her crystal glass, steady hands. I don't know how to reach her, she said, sliding the water across the counter. Lucas didn't pick it up. Have you tried letting her reach you? Mayline stiffened. I've done everything a mother can do. Therapy, nutrition, sleep specialists, speech pathologists. I flew in a behavioral therapist from Sweden who charges $30,000 a week. Lucas finally picked up the water and took a sip. Sounds like you've hired a lot of people to talk to her, he said, but who listens? I listen, she snapped. I rearranged my entire life for her. Did you rearrange your heart? The silence that followed wasn't hostile. It was hollow, like the echo of a question she hadn't wanted to hear. She was 2 when she stopped talking, Mayline whispered. One day she was babbling, saying colors, giggling at birds. The next, nothing, not even eye contact. Lucas leaned on the counter. What happened? Her eyes flickered. A medical reaction, vaccine schedule, a high fever. The doctor said it was coincidence, not causation, but I kept asking, was it my fault? Did I miss something? Lucas nodded. Parents always do, even when it's not theirs to carry. Becca wandered in, holding up her drawing, a picture of 3 people, her dad, and a girl with big eyes. I made this for her, she said, but only if she wants it. Mayline looked down, surprised by the grace in the little girl's voice. Would it be all right if Eva joined us for dinner sometime? Lucas asked. Dinner, Meline's tone sharpened, in a public place. No, here, Lucas said, safe, familiar. If she sees Becca eating, she may feel invited. I'm not hosting playdates, she replied tightly. Lucas didn't flinch. I'm not asking for a playdate. I'm offering her a doorway. Mayline folded her arms again, but something in her posture was different now. Less defense, more fear. I'm afraid of doing it wrong, she admitted almost inaudibly. I don't know how to be the kind of mother she needs. Lucas set his glass down. Then it's a good thing she doesn't need perfection. She just needs you to stop trying so hard to be a CEO around her. That line hung in the air like a dropped crown. Lucas turned toward the door. We'll be here next Friday around 5. She doesn't eat lobster, Mayline called after him. Lucas smiled faintly. Neither do we. As the door closed behind them, Mayline stared down at Becca's drawing still on the counter. 3 people holding hands, one bubble floating above them all, a caption written in crayon, safe. She traced the word with her finger. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like crying. She felt like listening. Do all rich people live in museums? Becca's voice echoed softly through the grand foyer of the Ward penthouse, her sneakers squeaking against the glossy floor. Lucas chuckled, steadying a paper bag in one hand and a foldable picnic blanket in the other. Not all of them, just the ones who forgot what a living room is for. Mayline appeared at the top of the staircase, barefoot, hair loosely tied back, a rare softness in her posture. I heard that. Becca blushed. Sorry, ma'am. Mayline smiled genuinely. No apology needed. You're right. This place has too many walls and not enough warmth. Lucas raised an eyebrow, surprised. That sounded dangerously close to self-awareness. Mayline descended the stairs. Don't get used to it. They gathered in Eva's room at sunset. Lucas spread the picnic blanket over the floor while Becca arranged small bowls of snacks, grapes, cheese cubes, crackers. Nothing hot, nothing with smells, everything soft, everything safe. Eva sat in the corner, legs tucked under her like a doll left behind, but her eyes weren't blank this time. They followed Becca's every movement. Lucas sat down a small Bluetooth speaker and tapped his phone. A soft piano melody drifted through the room, Debussy, slow and lilting. Becca placed a blank sketch pad between herself and Eva, then quietly began drawing, a tree, then a sun, then a girl under the branches. She didn't speak, she didn't look at Eva, she just drew. Eva watched, her fingers twitched. Lucas opened a tin of crayons. Blue first, he said gently, placing the crayon closer to Eva than anyone else. Mayline watched from the doorway, arms crossed, but not in defiance this time, in defense of what she wasn't sure, maybe her own hope. Eva leaned forward 1 inch, then another. She reached for the blue crayon, barely breathing, as if even sound might ruin it. Then swish, she began to draw. No one said a word, not even Becca, just the faint rhythm of wax on paper, the soft breathing of a girl rediscovering her voice through color. Lucas turned to Mayline and whispered, "This is what safety looks like. It doesn't arrive with applause, it arrives with stillness." Mayline swallowed hard. Why doesn't she talk to me? She asked, her voice barely audible. Lucas didn't look at her, because you don't sit on the floor. An hour passed like a hymn. No outbursts, no rocking. Eva even accepted a grape from Becca's hand, a miracle wrapped in silence. Becca giggled. She likes me. She does, Lucas said, his voice thick. She's choosing you. Eva drew 3 stick figures, one with glasses, one with curly hair, one with a tight bun. Becca pointed, that's me, that's Daddy, and that's your mom. Eva didn't answer. She just colored the 3rd figure's dress red. Mayline stepped forward. That used to be my favorite color, she said softly. Eva paused, then in the quietest voice imaginable, she whispered, still is. Mayline's knees gave out as she sank onto the edge of the bed, her hand covering her mouth, her breath trembling like a violin string pulled too tight. Lucas didn't move. Sometimes healing sounded like a whisper, sometimes it looked like a crayon. Later that evening, Lucas stood in the hallway folding the blanket. Mayline approached holding 2 mugs of tea. She called it red, she said. She hasn't labeled anything in over 2 years. She didn't label it, Lucas corrected. She remembered it, big difference. Mayline handed him a mug. You think I missed all of this because I didn't sit on the floor? I think, Lucas said gently, you've been standing so long you forgot how to kneel. She laughed once, dry and sharp. That's poetic. It's also true. They stood in silence, then Maylin asked, were you always this gentle? Lucas looked at her. No, I used to fix things. That was my job. My wife was the gentle one. What happened to her? Leukemia. 4 years ago she was diagnosed, and then she was gone before I could memorize the way she said goodbye. Maylin blinked. I'm sorry. She used to say something whenever our daughter had a hard day, Lucas added, eyes distant. She'd say, don't raise your voice, lower your body. Maylin stared at her tea. Maybe I've been doing both wrong. Lucas smiled faintly. You're here, that's not nothing. She met his gaze for the first time, not as a CEO, not as a woman in control, but as a mother, frightened, flawed, and aching to get it right. I want to learn, she said. Lucas nodded, then start by asking her favorite color tomorrow, even if you already know the answer. That night, Maylin watched Eva sleep, her tiny finger still wrapped around the blue crayon. She whispered more to herself than anyone else, I never knew silence could be so loud. Down the hall, Lucas kissed Becca's forehead as she drifted off on the guest bed. He looked out the window at the glowing skyline and whispered back, sometimes silence is just love waiting for room. Tell me again why we're doing this. Lucas adjusted the collar of his only ironed shirt, glancing at Becca through the rearview mirror. The girl was grinning in the back seat, her arms wrapped around a zippered tote bag. Because it's polite to accept dinner invitations, Becca said matter-of-factly, and because Miss Eva asked if I'd come back. Lucas smiled, but his heart was pounding. Dinner at the Ward penthouse. A soft evening sun cast a golden glow over the high-rises as they parked near the valet entrance. A man in a suit opened the door for them. Lucas stepped out with a paper-wrapped bouquet in hand, wildflowers from the farmer's market, a detail his late wife would have insisted on. Always bring beauty when you're stepping into someone's world, she used to say. Becca jumped out with quiet excitement. Do you think she'll talk again? I don't know, Lucas said, but I think she'll listen. They were greeted at the penthouse by Maylin herself, dressed not in a power suit but in a simple navy blouse and slacks, barefoot again. You brought flowers, she asked, surprised. For the room, Lucas replied, it needs something alive. She blinked. I suppose that includes us tonight. The dining room, once a cold expanse of marble and crystal, had been subtly rearranged. A round table had replaced the long executive-style one. The overhead lighting had been dimmed. A single candle flickered gently. Eva sat at the table already, her hands folded, a crayon tucked between two fingers like a comfort object. Becca slid into the seat beside her and whispered, I brought something. From her tote, she pulled out a small hand-drawn menu with cartoon foods. Smiling grapes, dancing toast, a macaroni sun. Eva's lips curved upward. Maylin watched the exchange like she was witnessing a magic trick. Dinner was served, simple soft foods, no sauces, no steam. Eva's plate matched Becca's. And Lucas noticed something else too, the absence of Maylin's phone. Tonight, she said, noticing his glance, I'm only reachable in one language. Lucas chuckled, that's progress. For the first few minutes, silence ruled the table. Then Becca asked Eva, do you want to color after dinner? Eva looked at her plate. Becca waited. Eva reached out, picked up a soft piece of baked sweet potato, and placed it in her mouth. Lucas froze, his heart stilled. Becca smiled like it was the most normal thing in the world. Yay, twinsies. Maylin exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her glass. Lucas leaned closer and whispered, she didn't eat this morning, did she? Maylin shook her head, or yesterday. She's choosing this, he said, this moment, this company, this stillness. Maylin's eyes welled. Why do I feel like I've missed every step that mattered? Lucas didn't answer. Instead, he said, let her lied. The girls finished their food slowly. Eva hummed once, one note almost like punctuation to the moment. Then she reached over and touched Becca's hand. Maylin gasped, not loudly, but sharply enough for Eva to flinch. Lucas held up a palm. It's okay, it's okay. Eva looked at her mother, then at Lucas. Then she said, clear, quiet, and beautiful, blue. Maylin dropped her fork. Lucas swallowed hard. She remembers the bubbles. Eva nodded once. Becca whispered, she speaks in colors, that's how she feels safe. Mayline's lips parted, her voice broke. I used to paint before I started the company. Watercolors, my studio was painted blue. Eva didn't forget, Lucas said gently. You did. Later, the girls played in the adjoining room, Eva gently stacking blocks while Becca narrated imaginary stories about bubble kingdoms and cloud princesses. Lucas stood by the kitchen island washing dishes with sleeves rolled up. Mayline joined him holding a towel, drying silently. I thought I had to buy her future, she said finally. The right schools, the top doctors. I built her a fortress so nothing could touch her, but maybe I also built the walls too high for me to reach in. Lucas passed her a wet plate. It's not too late. She dried it slowly. She called you Blue. He nodded. That's a good thing. Blue is her comfort. Mayline glanced at him. What color am I to her, do you think? Lucas paused. Red still is. She let out a trembling laugh. Red burns. It also warms, he said. Sometimes the same fire that scorches is the one that saves. She stared at him and then quietly, why are you still single, Lucas? He raised an eyebrow. You really want to ask me that while I'm wrist deep in your sink? She smiled. You could have said yes to me hiring you weeks ago. I didn't want a job. Then what did you want? He rinsed the last plate, to be useful again to someone who actually needed me. She held his gaze for a long time, then nodded almost reverently. You are, she said softly. You're saving us in ways money never could. Lucas dried his hands. I'm not saving you, I'm just showing you the door. And if I don't know how to walk through it, then sit on the floor with your daughter, let her lead. As he gathered Becca's things to leave, Eva looked up from her drawing and said something no one expected. Dinner again. Lucas stopped mid-step. Mayline's hand went to her mouth. Of course, Becca said, next Friday. Eva smiled, and the room, for the first time in years, felt like a home. Do you have a minute? Lucas barely looked up from the mop bucket when he heard the voice, low, measured, with a silkiness that came from too many media briefings and not enough honesty. He turned. Greg Stanton, Wardcore's PR strategist, stood near the janitor's closet in a tailored suit that looked allergic to humility. Lucas wiped his hands on a towel. Not really, but something tells me you're going to take it anyway. Greg smiled like a man used to being obeyed. There's a story making rounds, a certain CEO, a certain janitor, a certain emotionally complicated child. Lucas's jaw tightened. You mean Eva? I mean optics. Greg glanced at the hallway cameras. Your presence is misunderstood. It raises questions. She's finally eating, drawing, speaking. If that raises questions, maybe the wrong people are asking. Greg stepped closer. Look, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to advise. If this continues, it could cost Mayline her position. You understand how fragile trust is in this world. Lucas stared at him. You think I'm the threat to her credibility? Greg gave a tight, professional smile. She's vulnerable, and you're unconventional, background unknown, no corporate credentials, no affiliations, a single dad who works night shifts and brings sidewalk flowers to dinner. Lucas didn't flinch, and yet somehow her daughter says my name. That landed. Greg's expression faltered just for a beat. Let's not complicate things further, Greg said. Take a leave quietly, let the headlines cool. Lucas lined in, voice calm but firm. Eva doesn't need less of me, she needs more of what I represent. Greg raised a brow, and what exactly is that? Someone who doesn't need her to perform to believe she's valuable. That evening, Lucas and Becca were preparing dinner when a message buzzed on his phone. Access to Building 14 suspended pending review. Management. Becca looked up. We're not going to see them tonight. Lucas tried to hide the disappointment in his face. Not tonight, bug. She went quiet, then softly, will she think we stopped caring? Lucas exhaled, the weight heavy in his chest. I hope not, but sometimes grown-ups build walls when they're afraid. Across the city, Mayline stood in Eva's room, staring at the silence. No humming, no color on the sketch pad, no crayon between fingers, just Eva, rocking again softly, head bowed. Mayline sat down on the floor beside her, unsure. I didn't stop him from coming, she whispered, but I didn't fight hard enough to keep him either. Eva didn't respond. Mayline reached for the sketch pad and gently set it between them. Can I draw with you? Nothing. I don't know how to fix this, she said. I thought protecting the company would protect you, but maybe I was protecting the wrong thing. Still nothing. Then Eva picked up a black crayon. Maylin watched as her daughter drew 3 figures, 2 standing, 1 missing. Her hands shook. I'll fix this, she whispered, even if it costs me everything else. The next day, Maylin showed up at Lucas's apartment unannounced. Becca opened the door with a wide-eyed gasp. Miss Maylin. Maylin knelt, completely out of breath and slightly windblown. Is your dad home? Lucas appeared behind her. I didn't expect to see you here. She looked up at him. They've frozen your access. They're threatening to reassign your contract. I figured. I didn't stop it, she said quietly. That's on me. Lucas studied her face. She wasn't here as a CEO. She was here as a mother on the edge. I told them I'd walk if they touched you again, she continued. They didn't take it well. Lucas blinked. You'd really risk all that. Her voice cracked. I already risked losing Eva once. I won't do it again. Becca pulled gently at Mayline's sleeve. She didn't eat last night, did she? Mayline shook her head. Becca whispered, maybe she's waiting for us. They returned that evening, no security, no press, just quiet. Lucas carried a thermos of warm soup and soft bread. Becca carried a new crayon set, one with glitter edges. Mayline opened the door, this time without hesitation. She's in the same spot, waiting. Lucas stepped in, heart thudding. He entered Eva's room slowly. She was sitting in the corner again, crayon in hand, but no movement. Hey, Bluebird, he said softly. Her head lifted, 1 blink, then 2. Lucas sat down, unscrewed the thermos, and let the scent of mild tomato soup drift through the air. Nothing fancy, he said, just warmth. Becca sat beside her, held out a single glitter blue crayon. We missed you. Eva reached out slowly, took it, and drew a shaky circle on the floor with it. Then she whispered, dinner again, please. Lucas looked up at Mayline. She was crying but smiling. I'll never let them come between this again, she said. Lucas nodded, then let's start building something stronger. Mayline wiped her eyes. No more walls. No more walls, he said, only doors left open. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and embossed with the gold seal of the Superior Court of New York. It sat like a warning flare on Mayline's marble kitchen island, untouched, unopened, but radiating dread. Lucas glanced at it as he rinsed dishes. That the thing? Mayline nodded once. Eva's father is filing for emergency custody. Lucas dried his hands slowly. After vanishing for 4 years, he says I've become unstable, that I'm exposing her to questionable figures and non-professionals. Her voice trembled. He means you. Lucas leaned back, arms crossed. That man wouldn't know Eva if she drew him a name tag. Mayline exhaled sharply, on the edge of laughter or collapse. He's wealthy, connected. His attorney used to clerk for the judge. Lucas walked around the island and leaned in gently. Do you want me to back off? Her answer was immediate, no. Then we fight. She looked up at him. I don't know how. You don't need to, he said. You just need to stand beside her, and I'll stand beside both of you. The courtroom smelled like leather, cold coffee, and fear. Eva sat quietly in the gallery beside Becca, clutching a sketch pad. She wore blue. Becca held her hand like a lifeline. Mayline stood before the judge in a navy suit, not designer but grounded. No flashy jewelry, no power heels, just a woman stripped of armor and holding on to truth. Across from her, Spencer Ward sat with a smirk carved into his face, and a legal team that looked like they'd rehearsed this war. Your Honor, Spencer's attorney began, Ms. Ward's emotional state has deteriorated. We have photographic evidence of her involving a janitorial worker, one with no clinical qualifications, in repeated unsupervised interactions with a vulnerable child. Lucas didn't flinch. The attorney continued, she's ignored professional medical advice in favor of bubble games and crayon therapy. Chuckles echoed from the gallery. Mayline stood taller. And what has Mr. Ward contributed in the past 4 years? The judge asked. Financial support and space to grow, Lucas muttered under his breath, space to disappear. Mayline's attorney rose. Your Honor, we don't deny Ms. Ward's methods have changed, but so have the results. Eva has spoken, she eats, she draws, she connects, all of which hadn't happened in over 2 years. and the man she's connected with, Lucas Hale, is here today. He'd like to speak. The judge nodded. Let him. Lucas stood, walked slowly to the witness stand. Every camera clicked, every whisper stopped. He sat, looked at the judge directly. I was a special education teacher for 11 years, he began. I left the classroom after my wife died, and I couldn't face the echo of my own loss in every child who needed more than I could give. He glanced at Eva. She brought me back. The courtroom held its breath. Eva doesn't need more labels, she needs fewer walls. I didn't treat her. I listened, I knelt. I matched her silence with my stillness, and in return she trusted me. He turned to Spencer. When's the last time she looked you in the eye? Spencer fumbled his cufflinks. Lucas continued, you think the suit makes you credible, but Eva doesn't care about titles. She cares about tone, about rhythm, about who enters her world without breaking it. He looked at the judge. I'm not here to parent her. I'm here because she taught me something every specialist forgot. Sometimes the most therapeutic thing you can do is stay. Silence. Then the judge nodded. Thank you, Mr. Hale. Lucas returned to his seat. Then softly, Becca stood up and walked to the judge's bench. Whispers erupted, but the judge raised a hand. Becca looked up at him with wide, determined eyes. Can I say something? The judge bent down. You may. She held up Eva's drawing, a trio of stick figures, arms linked under a sky full of stars. This is Eva's family, she said. That's me, that's my dad, that's her mom. She doesn't talk a lot, but she says we're blue. That means safe. Mayline wiped a tear as Eva reached out and touched Becca's hand, publicly, visibly, a gesture louder than words. The judge leaned back, silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, effective immediately. Eva remains in the custody of her mother, Mayline Ward. Any further action will require extensive psychological review and family therapy, in which Mr. Hale is welcome to participate with full transparency. Gasps, flashes, silence. Then Eva turned to Mayline and whispered, Stay blue. Mayline nodded, eyes shining, always. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing like lightning. Lucas shielded the girls with his body. Mayline grabbed his hand without thinking. A journalist shouted, Miss Ward, are you in a relationship with the janitor? Mayline paused, looked at Lucas, then answered, I'm in a relationship with the truth, and he's been living it far longer than I have. Lucas smiled quietly. Eva nestled between them, held Becca's hand, and didn't let go. No walls, no titles, just color, just connection, just family, building itself one quiet moment at a time. The blueprints were still warm from the printer when Mayline slid them across the table. Lucas stared at them, brows furrowing. You're serious about this? She looked up, no hint of her old corporate ice, only fire, purpose, and something deeper. You once said Eva didn't need perfection, just presence. So I want to build a place that reflects that, a space where kids like her don't have to prove they belong. He studied the plans, open concept rooms, no assigned seating, textures mapped by color, not category, soundproofed corners for retreat, soft lighting, no fluorescent buzz. At the top, bold and unshakable, the Ward Hale room for inclusion, not correction. Lucas leaned back, silent for a long moment. I used to sketch rooms like this in notebooks, he said, when I was teaching before life got louder. You still believe in it? She asked. I never stopped, he said. I just stopped thinking anyone else did. Mayline folded her hands, help me build it. He hesitated. You're asking a janitor to design a therapy center, he said slowly. I'm asking a father who listens before he speaks, she replied. That's rarer than any degree on my payroll. He looked at her, something tender surfacing beneath his caution. This room, he whispered, tapping the plans, won't just change children. It'll change their parents, their teachers. It might change people who didn't know they were broken. That's the point, Mayline said. I don't want to just help Eva. I want to redeem the silence I once filled with noise. Lucas nodded, then smiled. Then we build it, he said. Construction began in a quiet old building that used to be a storage space, once forgotten, now filled with the sound of something new being born. Becca helped paint stars on the walls. Eva surprisingly wanted to help too. She painted blue, always blue, but one day added a streak of yellow in the corner. What's that? Lucas asked. Eva paused, then whispered, hope. He choked back emotion. Yeah, he said, exactly that. Mayline started spending evenings on site, wearing sneakers and carrying color swatches instead of spreadsheets. One afternoon, she sat with Lucas on a stack of unused carpet rolls, sweat on her brow, dust in her hair. I don't recognize myself anymore, she said. That's not a bad thing, Lucas replied. She looked at him. I used to think love was performance, straight A's, perfect posture, clean presentations. Then this little girl came into my life and said nothing, but taught me everything. Lucas nodded slowly. Children don't care who you are, only how you show up. She hesitated. Do you think this center will be enough? He turned to her gently. Nothing will ever be enough, that's the secret. But if you pour love into it without needing applause, it becomes more than a building. It becomes belonging. She smiled, but it faded into something else. I'm scared, Lucas. If this fails, if I fail again, what happens to her? Lucas didn't hesitate. Then we fall with her, he said. But we fall together, that's the difference. Opening day arrived under golden skies. Balloons floated above the door. The sign gleamed under sunlight, the Ward Hale room. Below it, a small plaque, no titles, no tests, just time, trust, and tenderness. Families arrived hesitant at first, parents holding tight to children, teachers watching carefully. But inside, everything felt different. No one asked what diagnosis a child had. They asked what music they liked, what color calmed them, what made them laugh. Lucas moved through the rooms like he'd always lived there. He showed a father how to use soft hands with his overstimulated son. He knelt beside a girl who didn't speak, matching her breathing rhythm until she smiled. Becca led a group in drawing bubble patterns on the window. Eva sat quietly on a bean bag, humming to herself, but not alone. 2 other children sat beside her, mimicking her tune. Mayline stood in the corner, stunned. I dreamed this room, she whispered, but I didn't believe it could breathe. Lucas stood beside her. It's breathing because you stopped controlling the air. She turned to him. You know what I feared most? What? That Eva would never call me Mom. He was quiet. Then she added, voice thick, but lately, I'm starting to hope she never has to, because love like this, it speaks without labels. Lucas looked at her for a long moment. You become the room, he said softly, unlabeled, unafraid. She laughed quietly. You always say things that sound like they belong in a poem. He looked at her, maybe because life finally feels like one. That night, as they locked up, Mayline lingered at the doorway. Lucas turned the key, then looked at her, lit by the glow of the new sign. Thank you, she said. For what? For helping me build a place where I could finally meet my own daughter. Lucas didn't speak. He just stepped beside her, their hands brushing slightly but deliberately as they looked at what they'd built. Not a monument, a movement, not a center, a beginning. The old community garden had been abandoned for years, its benches cracked, its soil hardened, its vines tangled like forgotten intentions. But today it was alive again. Lucas knelt in the earth, hands dirty, sweat trickling down his neck as he guided Eva's small fingers around a seedling. Becca was nearby, gently pressing soil around another sprout. And Mayline, yes, Mayline Ward, was wearing jeans and sneakers, her hair tied in a messy ponytail, holding a trowel like she'd wielded it her whole life. This place was her dream, Lucas said quietly. Mayline looked over. Your wife's. He nodded. She used to say that kids with different needs grow best in wild places, places that didn't ask them to shrink. Mayline looked around. You're bringing it back. I think, Lucas replied, it's bringing us back. Eva crouched beside a patch of bluebells, humming softly. She's been choosing blue more often, Mayline noted. Lucas smiled. It's the color she paints safety with. Then Eva stood, walked to the mural wall they'd just finished repainting, picked up a brush, and without a word began painting a streak of yellow. Becca gasped. That's not her usual. Eva paused, glanced back at Mayline, then kept painting. Yellow rays from a blue sun stretching across the wall like a dawn she was no longer afraid of. She's adding light, Lucas whispered. Mayline's throat tightened. It's the first time she's chosen a warm color. Eva turned around, walked to her mother, held out the paintbrush, and spoke. You do one. Mayline's hand trembled as she took it. Where? She asked gently. Eva pointed, next to mine. Mayline dipped the brush in a soft coral hue and made a single stroke beside her daughter's. Then, after a pause, she added another. Eva smiled wide, real, and radiant. Lucas stepped back, watching them side by side. You've crossed over, he said softly. Maylene turned, crossed where? From trying to reach her world to letting her build one with you in it. She looked at him, a question in her eyes, but he just smiled and nodded toward Eva. She's the architect now. Later, as the sun dipped behind the horizon and cast the garden in amber light, the four of them sat on a worn bench, cracked wood, peeling paint, but perfectly imperfect. Becca leaned into Lucas. Do you think this place will grow? I think, he said, brushing a leaf from her hair, it already is. Maylene watched Eva collect small wildflowers and line them in color order. She used to do that with cereal, she said quietly. Sort it by shape, then by color, then cry if I moved one. She wasn't being difficult, Lucas said. She was trying to bring order to a world that never asked her how it felt to live in it. Maylene nodded slowly. I never asked either. But you're listening now. She looked at him. Lucas, when this all started, I saw you as a temporary fix. He raised an eyebrow. Thanks. She chuckled. I mean it. I thought you were a phase, a moment, a mistake I was too tired to correct. And now, she looked toward Eva, now I think you were the first right thing I didn't control. Lucas turned toward her fully. Why are you telling me this? Because something's changed, she said. Not just with Eva, with me. I didn't speak. She continued, before you I filled silence with noise, meetings, plans, metrics. I thought if I controlled enough, I could outmaneuver the loneliness. And now I don't want to maneuver anything anymore. Lucas looked at her for a long moment, the garden air holding them like a pause in a symphony. He spoke softly. There's a difference between building walls and planting roots. Maylene nodded, tears forming. I think I'm ready to root. Eva walked over holding a piece of paper, a drawing. 3 figures holding hands. One had curly hair, one wore glasses, one had a ponytail and a smile so big it nearly reached the paper's edge. Above them was a sky filled with blue and yellow stars. Lucas read the small caption scribbled at the bottom in shaky handwriting. Home is when we all fit in the same picture. Maylene pressed the drawing to her chest. Lucas wrapped an arm gently around her. Becca leaned her head on Maylene's shoulder and Eva, quiet Eva, whispered something so soft it felt like music. Let's stay here forever. And in that moment they all silently agreed. They already were. The photograph was blurry but damning. Maylene wore barefoot in a garden laughing, next to her Lucas smiling, shirt sleeves rolled, hand gently brushing hers. A child's painting hung behind them, messy and bright, and in bold accusatory letters across the top of the tabloid. From boardroom to bubbles, is Wardcore's CEO falling for her janitor? The article dropped at 7:42 a.m. By 8:03 it had gone viral. By 8:15 Lucas's phone buzzed with a message he didn't expect from Maylene herself. Don't speak to the press. I'll handle this. But the look on her face when she arrived at the center said otherwise. She was pale, lips tight, phone glued to her palm. They're calling for my resignation, Lucas exhaled. The board, half of them, and Greg. Her voice cracked. He says I've compromised our brand, she broke off, swallowing the words, blurred lines. Lucas nodded slowly. And what do you think? She looked at him, eyes rimmed red. I think I'm tired of being a brand. They stood in the hallway of the Wardhale room, surrounded by drawings taped to the walls, scribbles, laughter, color, none of it corporate, all of it real. I can resign, she whispered quietly, gracefully. We protect the foundation, we protect you. Lucas's expression darkened. No, you've seen the backlash. I've seen a girl who paints yellow suns now. Maylene looked away. Lucas stepped closer. You want to walk away to protect this place. I get it, but don't lie to yourself and call it noble. The center wasn't built on image, it was built on presence, on staying. She blinked hard, jaw trembling. Then what do I do? You stay, even when it's loud, even when it's unfair, especially when it's personal. She folded into herself. I don't want Eva to be a headline. Lucas softened, then remind the world that she's a child, not a scandal. There was silence. Then Lucas asked, would it help if I stepped back? Maylene turned to him so fast he barely saw it coming. Don't you dare. His breath caught. She took a step closer. I don't care what the press says. I don't care what Greg says. I care what she says. She pointed toward the playroom. And she says your name like it means safe. I won't take that from her. Not again. Lucas's voice lowered, then we faced this together. But outside the storm had already arrived, protesters on the sidewalk, reporters crowding the entrance, photographers with long lenses snapping every moment. Some signs praised the foundation. Others read, Janitor's agenda, protect Eva from PR experiments. We trusted her. She betrayed us. Inside, the boardroom boiled. Greg paced at the head of the long glass table. We gave you every opportunity to rebuild your image, but instead you doubled down on the drama. I invested in people, Malin said evenly. You invested in a liability, Greg snapped, glaring at Lucas. He may be noble, but he's not qualified. Lucas didn't speak, not yet. Greg turned to the board. This center is a passion project. It's become a circus. Donors are pulling. Stock has dropped. We can't afford another week of this. Malin stood, then I resign. Gasps echoed. Greg smirked, smart move. But she wasn't done. I resign from you, not from this. Greg's brow furrowed. I've built boardrooms, I've negotiated billion-dollar contracts, and not once did I feel as proud as I did watching my daughter say hope in yellow paint. Her voice cracked, but she held steady. I was wrong about what leadership means, but I'm not wrong about this place. She turned to the board members one by one. Fire me if you need to protect your stocks, but I'm not walking away from the only thing in my life that's finally growing. She looked at Lucas, and I'm not walking away from the man who reminded me that love doesn't ask for permission. Then she walked out, head high. Lucas found her minutes later sitting alone on the stairs behind the building. Her hands shook. He sat beside her. You sure about that exit? He asked. No, she said, but I'm sure about you. Lucas looked at her. That may be the bravest thing anyone's ever said to me. She smiled through a tear. You know what scares me most? What? That I didn't just fall in love with you, I grew into it. He was quiet for a beat, then whispered, good, that means it's strong. A moment passed, then another. She looked up. If we lose everything, funding, support, media favor, what do we do? Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a child's drawing, Eva's, 3 figures holding hands, one in a red dress, one with curly hair, one with glasses, and in the corner a sentence in shaky handwriting, don't go, stay blue. He handed it to her. That's what we do, he said, we stay. Malin clutched the paper to her heart. For the first time in days, she didn't feel like breaking. She felt like fighting. Rain was falling in sheets the morning Malin called the press conference. Not soft, forgiving rain, not symbolic cleansing, a full-throated storm, the kind that made people stay inside unless they had something worth standing in the rain for. Malin stood at the podium in front of the Wardhale room, hair pulled back, no makeup, no designer coat, just a gray sweater and rain-slicked jeans. She looked like a woman who had nothing to sell but everything to say. Cameras pointed at her like cannons. Microphones stood at attention like soldiers. But Lucas, watching from the sidelines with Eva and Becca, saw something different. He saw a mother, a fighter, a woman finally stepping into her truth, not to defend herself, but to invite others in. Malin gripped the edges of the podium and exhaled. I've been asked by my board, by my PR team, by my investors to explain myself. Click flash murmurs, she went on, to explain why I allowed my daughter to be seen in public, why I let a man without a medical license become her closest confidant, why I, the CEO of a billion-dollar company, would kneel on the floor and paint stars on a wall. She paused, scanning the crowd. I could give you a statement, a bullet-pointed defense, but I won't, her voice steadied, because I'm not here to explain myself, I'm here to remember who I forgot to be. A hush fell. I forgot what it meant to slow down, to see my child, not as a patient or a problem, but as a person, brilliant, unique, worthy. And I forgot what love looks like when it doesn't need to be polished or perfect. She gestured behind her toward the glass doors of the center. And that man you all wrote about, the janitor, her voice softened. He taught me how to listen, how to kneel, how to meet my daughter where she is, not where I hoped she'd be. She glanced at Lucas, their eyes locked. And if standing beside him costs me everything I built from the top floor up, then maybe it's time I remember the foundation matters more than the penthouse. The reporters froze. No one dared interrupt. Then Malin smiled faintly. My daughter paints in colors. She used to choose only blue, safe, quiet, small, but last week she added yellow, and she called it hope. Her voice dropped just above a whisper. And if hope means kneeling in the dirt with someone who sees you fully, I'll stay there gladly. One reporter raised a hand cautiously. Miss Ward, are you stepping down? She shook her head. No, I'm stepping up not as CEO, as Eva's mother, as a woman who finally understands that leadership isn't about being followed. It's about making space for others to walk beside you. A second hand shot up, and Mr. Hale, what's his role now? Mayline smiled fully this time. He's not an employee, he's not a consultant, he's not someone I hired. Then she looked straight into the camera. He's family. The video went viral within hours, but not like before. This time the comments weren't cruel, they were human. She said what no executive ever dares to admit. We need more leaders who sound like mothers. I watched this with my autistic son beside me, and for the first time in a while we both felt seen. Lucas stood in the hallway of the center that evening, watching Eva finger paint alongside a boy with Down syndrome. Their laughter filled the air like wind chimes. Becca skipped up beside him. She drew a sunset today with orange and red. Red, Lucas asked. She usually avoids red. Becca grinned. She said red's not scary anymore because red means brave. Lucas blinked hard, heart full. Mayline appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, arms crossed, but her eyes soft. You were right, she said. About what? She stepped forward, that this wasn't about me saving her. It was about letting her save me. Lucas nodded. You listened. That's all it took. No, she said, it took you. Your presence, your stillness, your refusal to leave. She stepped closer. I told the world you were family, but I want you to hear it from me, not from a podium. She reached for his hand. Stay, Lucas, not for the center, not for Eva, not even for me. Her voice shook, tender and true. Stay because you want to. Lucas looked at her, eyes glistening. I've already unpacked, he whispered. Mayline smiled. Then Eva's voice, clear, strong, called from inside. Daddy, Mommy, look, we made a rainbow. They turned. Eva stood in front of a giant paper canvas streaked with color from one end to the other, and in the center 3 stick figures holding hands beneath the arch, red, blue, yellow. Mayline's eyes welled. Lucas whispered, she's painting in every color now. Mayline leaned her head against his shoulder. She finally feels safe enough to be all of herself. Outside, the storm had passed, and inside the room glowed, not from lights, from love. 6 months later, the Ward Hale room pulsed with life. The grand reopening had attracted local schools, therapists, and families across the state, but it wasn't the banners or balloons that made the day special. It was the hum of something deeper, belonging. In the central room, a circle of children sat barefoot on the floor, drawing with chunky pastels on butcher paper. No one asked them to sit straight. No one corrected how they held their crayons. Each line was its own language, and no one was forced to translate. At the front of the room, Lucas knelt beside a boy who was tapping his pencil rhythmically on the floor. You feel it in beats, huh? He said with a smile. Okay, let's make a drum line out of colors. The boy lit up. Across the room, Eva floated between stations like a quiet breeze. Her blue was still present on her shirt, her shoelaces, but so were the oranges, the lilacs, even deep reds, a rainbow stitched from courage. And she spoke, not constantly, but clearly. Today she was giving a tour to 3 new kids. She pointed to the reading nook, then to the textured wall filled with sensory panels. This one's like clouds, she whispered, letting them feel the soft cotton. Mayline watched from the glass door, heart full. She turned as a news anchor approached with a cameraman in tow. Miss Ward, ready for your interview. She smiled but shook her head. No interviews today, but it's the grand reopening. I know, she said softly. That's why I want the focus to be on them, the kids, not me. She turned and walked back into the room where Lucas was showing Becca and Eva how to fold paper stars. I think you just stunned the press, Lucas whispered as she approached. I'm learning to let silence speak, Mayline replied, thanks to both of you. Becca grinned. She used to talk in PowerPoints. Now she talks in hugs. Lucas chuckled, growth. Then he looked at Eva, who had just finished folding her star. She handed it to him and said simply, for blue. Lucas blinked back tears. I'll keep it forever. Becca chimed in. I made one too, but mine's for yellow, for hope. Mayline took a breath, knelt down, and folded her own. She handed it to Eva. Mine's red, for bravery like yours. Eva placed all 3 stars together and said, family. No one spoke for a moment, not out of awkwardness, but reverence. Then from across the room, a soft bell rang. It was time. The ribbon-cutting ceremony had been scheduled, but Lucas had insisted it not be formal. Let the kids cut it, he'd said. They built this. So now, standing beside the rainbow mural at the front entrance, Eva and Becca held scissors together. The ribbon wasn't corporate blue, it was every color they'd ever used. Before they cut it, Eva turned to the crowd and, without prompting, cleared her throat. "My name is Eva," she said. Her voice shook slightly but didn't falter. "I like colors, I like stars, and this place is for anyone who ever felt like a puzzle piece in the wrong box." Silence. Then applause broke like thunder, tears, smiles, parents hugging silently. The ribbon fell and the Ward Hale room officially opened, not as a building, but as a movement. That evening, the four of them shared dinner on the rooftop of the building: pizza, sodas, mismatched paper plates. The city lights twinkled like confetti below them. Becca chewed thoughtfully. "Do you think we'll always live near here?" Lucas glanced at Maylin. She nodded. "I think we'll always belong here." Eva leaned her head on Lucas's arm. "Home," she whispered. Lucas kissed the top of her head. "That's right." Maylin looked at the three of them. The wind picked up gently, blowing a folded paper star across the rooftop. She chased it, caught it, held it in her palm, and whispered almost to herself, "I never knew love could be this quiet and still say everything." Lucas stood beside her. "You know what the best part of this whole journey is?" he asked. "What?" "I came into your world thinking I had to teach you how to kneel." He turned to her, eyes kind. "But somewhere along the way, you learned how to stay." She touched his hand. "You didn't fix my daughter, you didn't fix me. You reminded us we were never broken." He smiled. "You just needed a place without labels and people who refused to leave." They stood in the fading golden light, paper stars scattered at their feet, a little girl who once hid in corners now painting skylines, and a world that, despite its noise, had finally learned how to listen. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city, Eva's voice carried on the breeze. "Tomorrow, let's paint the sky." Lucas and Maylin looked at each other, smiles widening. "Yes," Maylin whispered, "let's." If this story moved you even just a little, if it reminded you that love doesn't have to be loud to be powerful, then we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city, your country, or even just a heart emoji in the comments. We read every message, and we'd love to know where our stories are reaching. And if this story gave you hope, if it reminded you that kindness can rewrite destinies, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it, send it, let someone else feel seen. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a story that might just change your day or your heart. Thank you, truly, thank you for spending this time with us. We're honored you're here. Until the next story, stay kind, stay human, stay listening.